everybody. Welcome back to the B Channel podcast, where my objective is to bless, edify, and encourage others to live their best lives. Today, I have with me Coach Norman Murray, and our topic for today is going to be building boundaries. But before we get into all that, please introduce yourself to the people if they have not met you from the last few episodes.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, young lady. Norman Murray, Building Bridges, one act of love at a time. Second time on your show. I'm trying to make this a yearly occurrence. How about that? But
Yeah.
you know, so many people call what I do a ministry. I call it a platform. It's a little bit of both, right? So Building Bridges, one act of love at a time. It started out as a podcast, and now we've entered new areas of selling merchandise. I'm now doing just social media for people. I'm doing digital media for people. I'm doing obituaries, and it's unfortunate, but it has to get done, right? So I'm doing a whole lot of different things, but the first and foremost, no matter what, everything I do is centered and grounded on the word of God, no matter what I do. So that's me in a nutshell. So
Yeah, sounds like you have your hands full. But today we're going to
today,
talk about how all of that, can work itself out in
right.
these different, areas that you find yourself, these roles that you find yourself playing. What did you learn about boundaries growing up?
Man, learning about boundaries. So, I grew up in a household that was a single parent, and I was the only boy. It was my mom and my two sisters. So you talk about boundaries, there was some boundaries right there, right? There was a whole lot of boundaries you couldn't cross and you couldn't do, right? So even in the sense of my older sister, even something simple as sibling fighting, rivalries and things like that, there was still a boundary that you couldn't cross, right? So that's first and foremost. So what the only thing that did was it helped me to prepare myself when I got out in the real world. Because when I got out in the real world, I didn't have no brothers. I didn't come from a family that had a bunch of brothers. So I had to know my boundaries and watch myself wherever I was at, whatever I was doing, because I had nobody to call. So if it was going to go down, it was going to be me by myself. Right. And so life goes on. But learning about boundaries, I think it starts in the home and then it eventually grows, because as we venture out into different areas of our lives, you will learn very quickly. When you get on the job, there's a boundary you can't cross. When you start dealing with a relationship with a wife, a husband, whatever it is, there's a boundary you don't cross, so life will teach you boundaries. And so if you're smart enough and you pick up on them, you'll know what boundaries not to cross. So
That was really some great insight because I never thought about you having to be on your own because you were the only brother. Like you were a brother, but there were no brothers for
right.
you to count on.
That's right.
You had a role as the covering for the family.
There you
So
go.
that was a lot to kind of take on, but I never really thought about, you never think about how the person feels because you think, oh, they have siblings.
Right.
But they're still, in a way, you were the only child because you were the only boy. So,
I was the only
like you
boy.
said, like
Right.
even when y'all fought, okay, it's only so much you can really do
Right.
because you have to respect that she's a woman, even when you're
Absolutely.
fighting with her. And
And
oh, I can't go in that room.
right.
They doing this, they doing that. They got certain things that are going on that you have no idea about, right?
Absolutely. And then
So
later on, my mom she married, and then I received two stepbrothers. And I say it like that in the beginning, but those are my brothers, right? But they are much younger than me. So even then, I still didn't have anybody. They had somebody, but I didn't have anybody, right? So, but it was all good.
wow.
So, yeah,
But that became your bonus brothers, but
there you go, my
it
bonus
also
brothers. Yeah,
it
absolutely.
also gave you like it gave you a sense of community and mentorship, I would say, right?
Oh,
To have to
absolutely.
have to
Absolutely.
like look after them and be like, oh, this is what you do, this is what you don't do. So you got to teach boundaries.
Right. I mean, and because I was so much older already, I was heading out the house, starting to my own family and, watching them do what they do. And, but everybody's adults now, all of us. Right. But yeah, but boundaries are something. But you know what happens in life though, seriously though, with boundaries, sometimes we cross boundaries and don't know that we're crossing boundaries because you just might not have that type of relationship that you think you had with somebody, and now you done crossed the boundary that you shouldn't have crossed, or vice versa. Somebody crosses onto your side when you were hoping that they would have stayed at bay. So
Right. That really is a great segue into the next question. What are the misconceptions that people have about boundaries?
I think one of the misconceptions is that it's all good. It's a statement, right? It's all good, but it's really not. We have to learn each other. You walk into a room, you can almost read the room. You know who's feeling down. You can tell when somebody's not their normal self, right? So if you're the type of person that's always joking around and playing around, you got to read the room. And today just might not be the day. And you might cross a boundary that honestly was never there until today. Um, you have loss in your family, but you've never experienced loss before. You take that on differently. So now if somebody wants to play and joke around, that's not something you want to do, right? So it's a misconception that everything is okay, that it's all right. If you're my friend and you're my brother, it should be okay for me to still cross that boundary, but it's not. That's a misconception. The misconception is really about understanding another person and understanding how that person wants to be treated, because a boundary, like I say, it's invisible a lot of the times because you can tolerate more than what you would normally tolerate with a stranger. But a friend, somebody close to you, they'll infringe on your space. And when I say space, I don't mean just physical space. I mean mentally as well. Somebody might say some things to you that normally you would be like, okay, but now today is not that day, right? So
Right. And it's interesting when you talk about boundaries with people that we closest to, those that's the
mhm,
hardest thing, but it's the people that
yeah,
we need to set it with the most, because the strangers, sometimes it can be easy to open up to a stranger, but then
absolutely.
sometimes we like, oh yeah, that's I'm not going to talk to that person.
Right.
And then it's like family sometimes could be the stranger. So it's like it's all nuanced, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. It's all relative, no matter how you look at it, because it's really about the rapport and the relationship you have with somebody. Because I can guarantee you, most people that they have a friend, at least one friend or somebody they call a friend that's closer to them than most of their family.
Right.
You
And
know,
chosen family.
yeah, so and that's the one thing in life. One of the things in life you don't get to pick. You don't get to pick your family. I don't
Right.
live where my family lives. My entire family, I want to say 85 to 90% of my family is in Brooklyn, New York. I don't live in Brooklyn. I live in Virginia, right? And I've lived in
Right.
Minnesota. I've lived in Florida. I've lived in Maryland. So for the most part, the closest people to me are the people that I go to church with. Those my church family I'm closer to. It doesn't change the love I have for my blood, but because out of sight, out of mind, you're not there. So
Right.
guess what? The people in the church might be able to say something to me that my blood might not be able to say because we don't have that same relationship. So,
Right. And that's the funny part sometimes. What I'm learning about boundaries is that access and exposure is a big part that we need to really learn. Like, you can decide, have
right.
agency over how much access somebody has to you and how much exposure
Absolutely.
you allow them to have, like in terms of your life and being around you and in your space. And because some people are in your space more, they do feel like they can have the license to say more things. And then
Right.
other people, they know better because they're not around you. Or they might
Correct.
not know better because they don't even care to know.
Don't even
And that's
care.
another thing you were saying about asking people about
Mhm.
about people knowing and having
Yeah,
clarity. Some people are not seeking clarity.
that's
So
true.
that's the issue sometimes too.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because the access piece, watch this. Social media is a place for you to gain access to somebody. And let me tell you something. Social media, let me say this loud and clear to your listeners. Social media exposes the real you, because that's a place that you believe that you can do and say whatever you want to say. You might not say that in the confines of your home, on your job, or in the church, but all of a sudden on social media, what you like, what you love, what you comment on, everybody can see it. And it gives people access, which means they feel they could say whatever they want back to you. So you can't get
Yeah.
upset. You've given them the access to you.
Yeah, and
You know?
sometimes people have a false sense of
Mhm.
closeness. They feel like they know you because they
Right.
see you say certain things. But
Right.
like a lot of people that I follow, they say like, that might be like 10% of my life. You see what I allow you to see, and there's
Right.
different limits that you can set if you really know what you're doing on these social media streets.
Right. But guess what? To the majority of the people, well, if you put it out there, that's how you feel. So
Right.
yeah, you're right. I might only see 10% of you, but that 10% of you is telling me a whole lot about you because it's telling me what you like, what you love, where your heart is at, where your head is at 90% of the time. You
Yeah,
know,
and then what's dangerous though about that perception is that it's a curated space.
it
Like I
is.
just said, you allow people. It's like what you allow people to see, but
Mhm.
also yeah, you do feel a certain sense of comfortability, especially if you find social media is like a place where you find community. So it's like you
Absolutely.
feel like you can be your real self, and then whoever doesn't like it, that exposes those people.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It will expose the real you, whether you're posting or commenting on somebody something, right? Because
Yeah,
you feel like, well, ain't nobody gonna do nothing to me, so I can type what I want to type. I can say what I want to say, but really, it's exposing you more than you think it is.
yeah,
It's almost like people, because my business page, right? Your business pages on social media they aren't private; they're public because they're business pages. And I get people, you know, oh, I don't believe in Jesus. Okay, well, but why are you on a page that only talks about Jesus, right? So you're looking for divisiveness. You're looking to challenge. And the only thing I say is, man, I appreciate your comment. God bless you, man. Have a good day. And then it's like, uh, and then they got,
right.
so it really depends on how you respond to people, how you do things, because boundaries are often also set by the way you are with people,
Right.
you know?
And
So,
so, what do you think is the biggest blessing you discovered by setting boundaries?
ooh, that's a good question. The biggest blessing I think that can come out of setting a boundary is that you know where you stand, right? You don't have to fake it. You don't have to do anything other than you know where you stand. I'm gonna be real with you. Just like a racist, some people say keep that to yourself. No, I want to know. I want to know how you feel. It doesn't mean we have to be at odds, but I know how you feel, so I know how to deal with you. It doesn't mean I have to hate you back, but now I understand that's why you do what you do. That's why you act the way you act. So the boundary that's being set, it's telling me where we are. So that's a blessing, believe it or not, because you really want to know where somebody stands with you. You don't want somebody being fake with you. So if the boundary is up and there's a wall up, there's a reason for that wall being up, whether you agree with it or like it or not. So
Yeah, and that's so powerful because boundaries are simply information that helps you be able to move about better. Like you said, in their relationship, you have more knowledge, you have more
right,
clarity, then you can be a better friend or whoever you are to that person because you
agree.
know more about
Mhm.
that person and what they expect, what they require. And that's all you're saying is this. And the thing about it sometimes that we get upset about is we expect that they're going to do it whatever we say, and then
Right,
but at least they know. That's the
right. At
thing,
least they know.
knowledge.
Right,
Right,
right.
that's what I say. It's planting the seed. They don't have to do what I say. I'm just
They,
letting you know what the
they
deal
don't.
is and why I'm acting like I'm acting and why I feel like I feel like you said. And so
Right.
that's the thing. Sometimes it can get a little trippy. And then in the Christian space, people be like, oh, turn the other cheek, love everybody, right? But you also
Mhm.
have to protect yourself. Jesus himself even protected himself. He went off to pray to a
Absolutely.
quiet place. He had all these crowds, and he was like, you know what? I gotta go over here for a minute. He was like, I gotta go
Listen,
lay down. And he
listen.
said, dust your feet off if they don't, if they
That's
don't
right.
welcome you, dust your feet off. So if Jesus said that, like in Matthew chapter 10:13, I think it is, he said that, dust your feet off, they don't welcome you, you
That's
know?
it.
And so, he went off to quiet places and pray and
He
everything
did.
like that. So that was a boundary because he said,
Right.
I need time.
But you know what comes with setting boundaries, and that's wisdom. So since you we know where each other stands on our faith walk. Solomon, the wisest man ever, wrote Ecclesiastes. He wrote the book of Proverbs, right? he talks about wisdom. We got to use wisdom in what we do. And you're right. Yes, turn the other cheek, and okay, yeah. It don't mean being saved, being walking with Christ don't mean you're a punk. It does not mean that. It
Right.
does. We do have a better sense, or at least we try. We're striving to have better self-control. Okay. And so that self-control kicks in, where the Holy Spirit kicks in, and it's like, okay, the old me would have reacted first and then thought about what I did. The new me thinks about what I do before I react, right? And so all of those things, and that comes with time, that comes with wisdom. So wisdom and boundaries, they work hand in hand.
Yeah, and I think that there is a misconception that if you are believing in God, you're believing in Jesus, right? You're just going to be like, ah, I'll just take anything, I'll be a doormat,
Right.
right? You have to. But it's about meekness, which is strength under control.
That's right. That's right.
So it's
That's
like, oh,
right.
when do I
Absolutely.
use this?
It's when do you use, right? Because there's a time and a place for everything. Remember, Solomon said that too. Is there's nothing new under the sun. There's a time and a place
Okay.
for everything. Okay. So I'm just trying, to get your listeners to understand that wisdom is such a big part of what we do. If you go back and look at Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, and start reading 1 through 11, you'll see there's a time for everything.
Yes.
There's a time. There's a time to mourn. There's a time to laugh. There's a time to rend. There's a time to sow. There's a time to pluck up. All these different things, and God knew all of these feelings that we were going to have, both positive and negative. But there's a time for it, and we have to make sure that we use wisdom. And setting boundaries allows us to help. It actually helps us manage through the boundaries, because somebody's going to cross one day. So what do you do when they cross?
Like Jesus was like, I love him because he said, like he was mad. He was When he was mad, he was mad. He turned over the tables. When he
That's
was
it.
sad, he cried with the people, even though he knew he was
That's
gonna raise Lazarus.
right.
He took his moments, he took
Right.
his time. And that's something too. It does require patience when you're trying to establish boundaries, especially if you weren't somebody who did that before.
Right.
So it's like people are like, okay, what do I do with this now? Like, I don't know what to do with this,
Yeah.
or they might not like it if they were used to you not setting them. So that's
That is
something.
correct.
Yeah. So do you have any practical advice for people out there that have never done that before? They never set boundaries. What do
Mm.
they do? What would they do as a baby step? What do they do to get started?
A baby step is to, honestly, I say this all the time, even to the people in my church, right? Words matter. Words matter. Why do I say words matter? Because most people don't know what words mean. People think they know what words mean. And I was just teaching a class on this, and one of the words that came up was ignorant. Somebody calls you ignorant. That's not a 4-letter word. Ignorant is not a bad thing. To be called, listen, I want to be clear. Being called ignorant is not being called stupid. It doesn't mean dumb. Ignorance, if you look up the word, it means lack of knowledge. It means you just don't know what you're talking about on this particular topic or this particular subject. So the reason why I'm saying that words matter is because you have to understand what does a boundary mean? Because if you don't really know what a boundary is, you might not be setting a boundary because you don't know what a boundary is. You might look at individuals and think that this boundary for them doesn't match this one over here, when in all actuality, it's in reverse, right? And so one thing to note, and I want to speak to this both maybe from the natural side and from the spiritual side. The natural side, again, is reading the room, knowing yourself. What can you take and not take? Because if you know yourself, you know what pushes your own buttons, then you need to set those boundaries for everybody else. Now, if you're talking about you saved, now you walking with Christ, you filled with the Holy Ghost, it's if you go to Galatians 5, the 9 fruit, not fruits with an S, but the 9 fruit of the Spirit, right? If you go through the list of them, we all have them, but we don't have it in a true sense. Love, joy, meekness, gentleness, goodness, right? Temperance, right? All of these things, you have to learn and exercise those spirits. You have to. So, for example, if you are a person that's never been loved, how can I expect you to love me? the way I need to be loved. You grew up in a terrible household. You grew up in a terrible environment. You don't really know what true love is. So the expectation shouldn't be for you to show the kind of love that you've never experienced. Right. So the same thing with boundaries. Once you know what your boundaries are, now you can look at some things and go, you know what? I need to work on that. I know I'm short tempered. Well, what's the fruit of the spirit that talks about being short tempered? Last time I checked, it was long suffering. Right. So that's a quality you know you need to work on. So those things help us manage boundaries. Those things help us when we're new, when we're walking and we're trying to figure out how do I not let somebody do this? I got to know who I am first. I got to know who I serve. I got to know whose I am. Right? And a lot of times people don't understand that because you can't have true love without having God's spirit. That's what his word says. You can't have the fruit of the spirit without the spirit. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's basic, but it's like, oh, wait a minute. That makes sense. Yes, it does. That's why Paul said it, and he was talking to the church when he said it. But anyway.
Yeah, I think that's really good because I don't know if you've heard of Albert Eugene, but I
Mm,
like him because he says that boundaries are about teaching someone else you. Like
mm,
you got to teach somebody how to treat you.
right,
And sometimes we don't want to do the work. We don't want to put in the effort. We don't believe that
right,
it has to be like intentionality and
right,
patience and all of these things in relationships. And then sometimes it is a big misconception in life that, oh, the only relationship that you really gotta put in work is for marriage. But
right.
that's not
No,
true at all. Your
not at all.
family, your friends, like if you interacting with somebody at all, a coworker or anybody on a regular basis, and you want to have a good relationship, you do have to learn the person, be
Right.
curious about the person. I'm learning that you
Absolutely.
need to pray for the people that's close to you.
Well,
It's so many different facets like of boundaries though, like financial boundaries. Oh, am I willing to give money to
right,
this person?
right.
Spiritual boundary. What are they doing? Are they doing something that doesn't align with what I agree with?
That's right.
Mental, emotional boundaries. What are they saying to me? How are they making me feel? Physical boundaries. Are you in my space too much? Do I need to
Right,
have a break? Oh, maybe
right,
I need an hour to myself, like you was talking about before in episode. Like you need to I need to decompress or something for a minute.
right.
Like
And
so, all
and
those things.
and everything that you're saying is 1000% true, but then you make sure that you flip the script. Make sure you're not the one that's encroaching on somebody too much. Make sure you're not the one that somebody needs a break from. You see
Right.
what I'm saying? So when you talked about teaching somebody you and you use the word relationship, what's the first 4 or 5 letters in the word relationship? Relate. You have to be able to relate. So it doesn't matter if it's your wife, it's your spouse, it's your cousin, it's your coworker, it's the guy down the block, the neighbor that barely talks to you. It's still being about relating. So it all comes together. And like you said, sometimes people don't want to do the work because it's an unlearned selfish behavior to only think about yourself. And when you do learn about yourself and you understand you, it is a little bit easier to teach somebody about you. All you got to do, the one of the most cliche statements ever made, quotes, treat people the way you want to be treated. Why is that so hard?
Because we don't know ourselves a lot of times.
That's
That's
right.
what I'm finding out. And I read an
Mhm.
article about grief. And it was about self-compassion. And
Mm,
I said, wow, it talked about being on your own side.
mm,
And sometimes we don't even know, like we're turning on ourselves, we're
yeah,
betraying ourselves. How
right.
are we going to expect other people to do right by us? We don't even know what's right for us.
Right.
So that's what I'm learning. Like, wow, you really got to
Absolutely.
have a great relationship with yourself, but it also starts with like God, like you said, like, okay, knowing how God feels about you and
Right.
learning that truth. Because if, okay, that's how God feels about me, okay, well, then I need to feel like that about myself. And then
Right.
if that's how he sees me, then these other image bearers, okay, he sees them like that too. And so
Right.
go from there.
You know, and you just said something about so if God feels that way, here's one of the hardest things to do when you're dealing with people and you're talking about a relationship. Are you looking at them for who they are, or are you looking at them because they're a soul? All souls need to be saved. I don't care how you feel about Donald Trump. I don't care how you feel about Michael Jackson. I don't care how you feel about TD Jakes. All souls, we want to be saved, regardless of how you feel about them. So that's part of the problem when we talk about boundaries, because a lot of times boundaries deal with our feelings and our emotions. They're fickle. We change. The word of God does not. So when we're dealing with people, are we looking at them from the perspective of, I just want you out of my face because you're irritating me? Or are we looking at them that they need something? Can I help? Do I have the ability? Do I actually have what they need so that they can get the help that they need? And maybe if I help them, the boundaries continue to grow a little bit further away. Now they don't encroach. And so, like you said, if we don't know ourselves and we don't know what we're even capable of doing, sometimes it's hard to deal with that. Sometimes it's hard to challenge somebody to say, hey, how do you tell somebody, my brother, my sister, have you considered this? And they ain't trying to hear it.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's all about everybody wanting to do the work. And that's what I've learned through this grief journey with losing my father. It's about wanting to do the work. And then, you take your moments, but it's really like when somebody passes, it just makes you realize how important relationships are,
yeah,
and that you actually should try to be more intentional about putting in work with the quality relationships, the safe people in your life. And
absolutely.
that's the key is boundaries are about safety at their core. It's about safety,
Right,
because even God said that, okay, don't go over there, don't eat it, don't eat from that tree,
right,
don't go to don't look back. I said
right,
don't look back, don't go back there where
right.
so it's just certain things like that.
Yeah,
And we don't see it like that. We're seeing it as if we're the person who the boundaries being set against, we're like, oh, we get all
right,
funny about it. But it's about the person feeling safe.
right. And there is a flip side to the boundary too, because sometimes we set boundaries and we've done a good job at setting the boundary, but we don't do a good job of adjusting the boundary, right? Because you
Over
might have set
time.
the boundary because you don't know them. But now you got to know them, but you still got the wall up. You still got the boundary up, but you know them better. And then sometimes we can push people away, right? Or we can bring people too close. It's about learning how to adjust that boundary, because just because you've created the boundary and you set it, it does not mean that it has to stay that way for so long. You know what I mean? So those
Yeah,
are
it's important to
valid.
regularly reevaluate. Like, where do
Absolutely.
they stand in my life? Where do I stand in their
Right.
life?
Right.
And also not force relationships.
Mhm.
Understand like what your role is and what their role is, because
Right.
just because it's one thing in one season doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. And
Absolutely.
it's crucial to understand
Right.
that, because you'll get hurt less if you realize, oh, people grow apart, people grow
Yeah.
close.
Yeah. And guess what? And guess what? No means no. And I'm not
Yes.
talking about in a sexual relationship not talking about that. God said, "Let your yays be yay and your nays be
Okay.
nay."
Matthew
Okay,
five
so
thirty seven.
no, no, no means no. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
if they say ho, then you need to ho. Or when you say ho, you're hoping that they respect you enough to back off, right? So again, it's give and take. It's knowing how to set the boundaries. Once you set the boundaries, can you go back and reevaluate? Has something changed? Does the wall get higher or does it get lower? Because that access we talked about is important too. Because the more you lower the wall, the more access they have, the quicker, the more they have access to you. So just depends.
Right. And like, just to be able to say, for instance, you can say, you know what, I don't need to talk to that person on the phone. Maybe it's just
Mhm.
social media.
Right.
Maybe I'm only talking to that person on the phone. It's not social media. Maybe I don't want to see that person. Maybe
Right.
we just talk on the phone. So
Mhm.
it's just knowing, like, okay, what do you want and what do you need? And can both of you respect the needs of the other person?
Yes. Right. Because a lot of times people are calling you not because they're checking on your well-being, but because they need something or they want something. And you don't even realize that you acquiesce every single time, not realizing that they may be using you until something happens, until what happens, right? until you need them, and then you realize, wow, I can't
Oh, this
believe
wasn't equal.
this wasn't even close. We were not on the same level at all. So that's why I'm saying, it's a give and take. It's a balance of understanding and knowing, what boundaries are. What do you want? How do you want to be treated? Are you how are you looking at the situation? And you can't look at each individual, each situation the same. It's got to be a case by
Right.
case basis.
Right. And it's funny because when you're in these different relationships, you have to learn that observation is important because the behaviors will speak for themselves. What people repeatedly do, history is like evidence of what they're going to do in the future. So it's like sometimes people say things, but what are they doing? And just
Right.
really paying attention because that's the only way oh, this doesn't work for me. Oh,
Right.
and then life transitions that can really teach you a lot too because you're like, oh, in this season, I did not have the bandwidth to even pay attention to
Right.
what you were doing. And now it's like, oh, I got time and space now. I got time today. So what's
Right.
going on here for real?
Now watch, I'm about to say something that if you had 2.2 million views, this might be controversial. What I'm about to say, right? But watch this. Maya Angelou says one of her favorite quotes, right? When they tell you who they are, believe them the first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people stick to that. But the truth of the matter is, if you say that and you stick to it, what you're saying is that people can't change.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And there has to be an ability, there has to be a chance to let somebody change. Think about where you are today as a person. You're not the same person you were a year ago, 5 years ago, and you have changed, whether it's for the good or the bad. But the capability, the ability to change still exists. And as long as we're breathing, as long as we serve this awesome God, Jesus, we can change. And it don't mean that I don't agree with her statement. What I'm saying is certain statements, certain quotes, if you learn them and like, yeah, this is how it fits my life right now, but it might not fit your life for the next 20 years. You have to come out of that. You have to change. You have to be able to adapt, right? Just like in business, if you don't adapt and change, you will get left behind. Very simply, you've been podcasting now for a while. You're not doing it the same way you did it the first one or two. You have to adapt and change as things change. And boundaries help in that area. So,
Yeah, that's important to realize that people can change, but you also have to watch out for the savior complex.
right.
Because sometimes you be willing to see the best in everybody. And it's a great attribute, but it can go overboard a lot.
Absolutely. You
You like,
gotta
ooh,
case by case. I see you. I know what hold on. Yep, I see what you do. I'm watching you. And I have to watch you differently than I watch everybody else because you've already shown me who you are. So until I see instances of change, I got to take you for who I know you to be.
right,
You know,
right. And just really be careful and have discernment.
you got to. Everybody doesn't understand that, but you're right. You're 100%
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
So
that's what I'm learning. Knowing this,
yeah,
sometimes you can know somebody your whole life, and
yeah,
still
yeah.
like not have certain conversations, not have certain type of interactions, so you don't even know things until
Because
you
we're
actually go.
flesh. Because we're flesh, and we don't certain things we don't want to believe about certain people, but yet they're showing it to you right in there, right in your face. And you're like, it can't, no, no, no. But
Yeah,
but she take them at their word.
yeah.
Mhm.
And then that's the hard thing. Sometimes you have to learn to accept people where they are, and believe that it's possible. Have hope for change, but be
Absolutely,
wise.
absolutely.
That's really the whole thing. Like with all this stuff, it's like you gotta hope, but be wise.
Right. That's that wisdom. That's why I brought up Solomon. I'm like, Solomon tells us that wisdom is more precious than any jewelry that you could ever have, than any precious stone, than any gold, silver. Wisdom is more precious than that.
Yeah, and then I think I really see that in Proverbs a lot. When you look at some of the things that is being discussed about relationships, that's what it's
Mhm.
about a lot of the time, and about how to show up in different situations, and like what would you do? Like even telling you that the kisses, like it says, like it's better to get wounds from a friend than an
Right.
enemy. Like
Than
to
an
like
enemy.
tell people the truth.
Right.
That's
Absolutely.
what boundary is like. I'm telling you the truth
I'm
about
trying
how
to
I
say.
feel, about how you've been acting, and this needs to change.
Right. Absolutely. Here's a little nugget, whether you knew or you didn't know, or maybe somebody out there doesn't know. Proverbs has 31 chapters. Read it every day. Proverbs was written by Solomon, but it was written for the youth. And I don't mean the youth of 10 and 12, meaning like 40s and below, because it helps you during your day. It helps you as you become an adult. So if you read those chapters one a day every month, you're gonna get some real good nuggets out of Proverbs. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite places, I think, because certain things that they say is like, wow, that's really everyday life. That's facts.
Everyday
Like,
life. Yeah.
yeah. So it's very practical. But this was a great conversation.
Yes,
Do
ma'am.
you have any projects that you're currently working on that you would like to share with us?
So I did just drop a episode on what is today? Today's the 11th. So on July 1st, I did just drop a new episode out there, and it's oh, look at that. I it just escaped me because you put me on the spot, right? But I've been working on it for a while, and what was crazy is that people were asking. I took a break, but I didn't take a break. So much was happening, and when I kind of went away, they was like, are you gone? And I was like, no. And I was so happy about it because it was people that say they don't believe in God. And they was like, man, I was waiting for your next episode. I thought you were done. I was like,
Oh,
no, I'm coming back. Hold on. So it's called Are We Offensive on Purpose?
oh yeah, I think I did listen
Yeah.
to that, and
And
I
so
wrote you about it. I really
you
enjoyed it.
did. You did.
Mhm.
You did. And it's again, it's a self-examining episode because we don't realize sometimes that we are offensive. And it doesn't mean that we're doing it on purpose, but when you go through the project that the episode, you come to find out, you know what, I probably need to change some things in the way I'm doing or what I'm saying to certain people. So outside of that, like I said, adding on to the business venture itself of doing digital media. I've been doing some local stuff here in Virginia, going to fairs and different events and getting some pretty, I'm not selling anything, but gaining followers, if
Mm.
that makes sense, right? Because I'm not out there, even though I have some merchandise. You can go to buildingbridges520.com and you'll see t-shirts and things like that. But that's not the primary focus, right? That's not the primary focus. The primary focus is continuing to put a message out there to the average person that kind of says, maybe I believe in God, I do, but I'm really not following him. I really don't understand. So it's more of a teaching ministry, if you will, giving people a different perspective. So more to come. More episodes are going to drop probably bi-weekly now because I got a bunch sitting in the hopper that I just need to just hit the button on, right? So that's what's going on with Building Bridges right now. So
Oh, that's really cool though, because like what I heard you saying is that discipleship is the core of your mission, and that it's
mhm,
more about people and their souls than what
absolutely,
everything else that's going on.
that's it.
And it's funny because I've just been watching a lot of content about that lately, about how do we like market Jesus better.
Right,
And
right,
it's not necessarily about all this other stuff that we think it is. It's
right.
about us being a billboard. How are we living our lives,
Correct.
like in just being human sometimes, and
Right,
not feeling like we have to be a spiritual robot.
right.
So that you
and
know.
and what it does, right? So I have a post that I'm going to do later on. So I don't know if you're on Good Pods, right? It's another platform for podcasting, right?
Okay.
And what's so crazy is that it rates you. A bunch of people is on it, and I came in number one. I'm just going to read this to you if you don't mind.
Okay.
On that platform, I'm the number one top 100 indie Christian all time chart. And then I'm number two on 3 more charts and number 3 on another chart, all about indie Christian religion, things like that of the genre, right? And what it does, what this tells me right here, even though I might not see them, it tells me that what I'm doing for the kingdom is making an impact. And I have a niche that I have to stick to. I can't be like everybody else, right? I don't have TD Jake's sponsorship type thing, but I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it to get the word out, that discipleship, that just people need to hear some good news, but they need to hear the truth within the good news. So I'm going to talk about the devil. I'm going to talk about if you don't live a life that's righteous, here's what your options are. And they ain't always pretty, but I'm going to give it to you in a loving and a kind way. Because remember, the mantra of Building Bridges is to inspire you, to motivate you, and to provoke you in thought. So
Right.
that's just where
And
I'm at.
that's all the important stuff, because sometimes it's like the approach is what turns people up, like, oh, this is what it meant like? Okay,
Right.
I'm not doing that. So
Right.
it's so important that we think about our approach and just really think about
Yeah.
what we're saying and how we're saying it. The delivery really does matter.
Delivery is so key. And your walk. Do you know the number one reason why people don't go to church? I'll just tell you. Church people. I'm serious. That's the
I've
number one
seen it
reason.
a lot,
If
even
you
in
if you
movies.
yeah, if you talk to people that don't come to church and just get to the root cause of why they don't come to church, it's going to be somebody that goes to the church. It doesn't mean if they're right or wrong or valid or not, but it's church people. And what I mean by that is because that's how I started Building Bridges, because it's a bridge with the gap in the middle of the bridge, and I'm trying to build a bridge between the world and the church. If you look at my logo, it's the cross on one side and the world on the other side. And that's part of the problem, is that we forget that we were once out there. And so now we start judging people. And I'm like, no, stop doing that. Just love them. Let God do what he's supposed to do, right? Last time I checked, some plant, some water, but God has
Okay,
to give the
I was just
increase.
thinking that. First Corinthians 3. Literally, I've been hearing that so much lately. I heard
Right.
it this morning. I was watching, where like last night I was watching a podcast, and lady was talking about that, because she was talking about how do we telling our story matters, and talking about, we always think that we gotta water, or we gotta do, it's up to us to get people to love God or whatever. But no, you're just planting a seed of awareness. You're just telling them, and they got to make the decision
That's
for
it.
themselves.
And
So
and you have to understand that some days you're going to be the seeder, and then other days you might be the waterer. But at the end of the day, no matter what, whether you're seeding or watering, God's got to give the increase. A man can't convert another man to anything. God has to do it. I can influence you. I can give you the word. I can live righteously before you to show you the example, but I can't do it for you.
ooh, child, this might have to be a whole nother conversation, because we get a little deep. You can already see it, and we gotta talk about that. But let's get to, how can we connect with you outside of this podcast? How can they find you?
They can find me at buildingbridges520.com. Everything about me is on there. All of the social media is there, all of the merchandise, all of the podcast episodes, just whatever it is I got going on is right there at buildingbridges520.com. If you want to contact me, phone number is in there, email is in there. Just hit me up and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. So
Okay, that's awesome. So, for those of you who are watching right now on YouTube, that's scrolling across the bottom of the screen, and it also, the T will be in the description if you are listening. And so thank everybody. Thank you so much for joining me, Norman. Um,
absolutely.
and then thank the audience. Thank y'all for listening, watching, whichever one you're doing. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor and like, comment, subscribe, or share. If you are listening over on Spotify, follow us, participate in today's poll, and make sure you leave a comment so we know what you thought about today's episode. And
Nice.
last but not least, make sure you follow me at B Channel 27 on all social platforms for more content just like this. Thank you so much again for tuning in, y'all, and peace and blessings until next time.
God bless.
Bye.